Vaheguru, 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 Vaheguru,
अंधुले अंध बिखै बिखराते क्यों चाल है गुर चाली सतगुर दया करे सुखदाता हम लावै आपन पाली गुर सिख मीत चलो गुर चाली जो गुर कह सोई पल मानो हर हर कथा निराली जो गुर कह सोई पल मानो हर हर कथा निराली। सासंग जी रल मिल के फतेह पढ़ानी जी। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। We're hoping to get through the Katha of the Rehat Maryada today. If it doesn't, and it's probably it won't, then we'll do it, finish it off next week, and then after that we'll start through Job Sahib. So Maharaj Kirpa now, we go through the whole of Job Sahib. So looking forward to that. But we this lecture on the Rehat Maryada is a request by the Gurdwara. So it wasn't planned, but it is an important topic. And it's funny because a lot of people who are getting into Sikhi, they ask questions about this stuff that we're going to talk about today. And also not just the Punjabis, but the people who are not Punjabi that come into Sikhi. They want to understand as well, what are the rules, what are the regulations, what should I do? I'm about to get married, what should that be like? You know, when I pass away, what should my family do for me? And as we become more global as a Panth, these are questions that we're going to have answers for. So, luckily, this is also available in English. Normally at the Amrit chart, they give you a copy of it in English. If you don't get it in English here, and they didn't have one here, you can go to Sikh Missionary Society and pick one up. It's worth reading. Now, the first thing is to understand who made this. So we'll talk about that. But just to introduce the front page of this document, it says that this is the Sikh Rehat Maryada, as agreed by the Akaal Takth, not the SGPC Rehat Maryada. The reason people confuse the two is because it says here, published by the parchaar committee of the Shromani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee. So the SGPC have a department called the parchaar. That's their job. And all they do is publish this, and it's available for free. So if you get charged for this, you've been had, okay? It's free, and it's published by the SGPC in India. And they give away thousands, hundreds of thousands every year. So it's the Akaal Takth Maryada, or Sikh Rehat Maryada. So first let's understand what is Maryada, because this is an important word as well. Now in Bani, this word is referred to as the historical meaning of this word. It's actually two sides of a river. So the kinare, you might call them, of the Nadi, there's two sides. That's called a Maryada. Marya hoya, on this side, on that side. And it means flowing in between the two sides of this river. Obviously, river is quite big, yeah? So it's not restrictive, it's just showing you the edges. And in Bani it says, Mara says, that in this world, when we come into this world, we come naked. Hai You know that everybody comes into the world naked. We don't come with clothes. Then Maharaj gives an example about if we don't get the right teachings in our life, what happens to us. And we talked about this at the one-day camp when we discussed what is a Sikh, and a Sikh should follow a rule of discipline. And this is what it said about having the mat. In fact, we talked about it in Ahran Mat Ved Hatyar as well, in Japji Sahib, which is Maharaj says, Hochi mat paya man hocha, gud sa makhi khaya. That if we don't have the high mat, hochi mat, low mat, then sometimes we pick up the good, sugar cane, you know, in Punjab you can buy good, and we eat that good, which is what we should be doing, yeah, but we end up eating the makhi with it as well. Makhi sits on the good. So what we want to learn to do is discriminate. What should I eat? What should not eat? What's good for me? What's not good for me? And then Maharaj says in the next tuk, after that line, Maharaj says, Naam marjad aya kal Peter, nango band chalaya. In Kaljug, the person didn't come into Maryada, didn't come into some kind of discipline to understand what I should do and what I shouldn't do. And therefore, they left nange. They came naked, but unfortunately, because they didn't learn how to act in this world, they also left naked. So we're thinking, what? We all die, but in Gurbani it tells us that Guru Nanak Dev Ji was blessed by Akaal Purkh with the clothes of Sifat Salah, of prayer and of worship. These two clothes, this is what a Gursikh is trying to do. So when we leave this world, right, it becomes like our demerits, which we've all got, loads of them, they get covered up by this Maryada. Yeah? It's like a cloth. So when we go outside, we look decent. That's what this is about. It's about leaving this world, not nange, but with the clothes of Sifat Salah. Guru Sahib, as we say, ki Satguru taak liya mohe papi parda. So Guru Sahib is going to taak lene. All our demerits, yeah, they won't get judged by Taramraj, because he won't have the chance to touch us, because Guru Sahib will bring us along. So this is what we're trying to do in this life, is to flow in the river of Gurmat. Gurmat is a river, and we're trying to stay in that river. So let's go on to understand. In many lines of Gurmat also Maharaj says about this. Other people have different Gurmats as well, right? Their own mat and their own Maryada. So in Bani it says, Musalmana sifat sariyat pad kare vichar. Bande se je pave vich bandi vekhan ko deedar. So the Muslim, he praises the Shariat, Sharia. We know about Sharia law. Nowadays it's a bit of a scary topic, Sharia law. But what it means is Islamic law. So the Muslim praises that Shariat because he reads it and he vichars upon it. But Maharaj says those people are counted as bande. Bande here doesn't mean as a man. It refers more to the person who is a slave, like Banda Singh Bahadur. He was a banda of Guru, so he's a slave. So bande se je pave vich bandi vekhan ko deedar. They are the ones that will see the didar, i.e. the vision of Waheguru. And we're trying to become those bande in Gurbani as well. Because Maharaj says, ki so Sikh sakha bandap hai pai, jo satgur ke, jo gur ke pane vich ave. So we're coming into Guru's pana, that makes us a bandap of our Guru, makes us the Banda Singh, what Banda was trying to become as well. And finally, Maharaj says clearly to us, Band paya mere satguru pure, hoi sarb kalyan. We are in ecstasy, in bliss, because we've been given the bandhan of our Guru. So this is what the word Maryada and the fact that in Kaljug, Maharaj is telling us to come into some kind of, not Hochi mat, but Gurmat. So we come into Gurmat, that's going to make us successfully get across. In terms of the background of this Maryada, why was there a need for one? But we also have to understand when this Maryada was made, there was other specific needs of the time as well, which are still relevant today as well, some of them. For example, the British, they had taken over India at that time when this was made. 1930s, 1940s, 50s, the British were in charge in the 40s. And there was a political need as well, because the British were claiming that the Sikhs were not some kind of serious religion. There were people that were saying, you guys are just an offshoot of Hinduism. You guys aren't really, no need to count you in the census. Like today, we try to have ourselves listed ethnically as Sikh. Why? Because we want to get ourselves counted. Because when we get counted, then we can say, hold on, these many Sikhs got attacked. Specifically because they were a Sikh. Yeah? So it's an anti-Sikh crime and not an anti-Asian crime. Because what happens nowadays is even people complain, some people that are doing bad stuff, they get counted as Asian. But we know it's like one community doing all this stuff, but we say, why are they being counted as Asian? Yeah? Because that might be a specific problem. So in the same way, we want to be counted specifically, so people wanted to have an agreed definition of a Sikh as well. The diaspora was also growing at that time. In 1915, people like Kartar Singh Saraban came back from America to fight for independence. So we weren't just in Punjab anymore. People had grown to different places. I remember seeing a picture of a lady who had become a Sikh in 1905 in Canada. You know, with the ship, I can't say the name properly, but it was stopped from landing. At that point, in Vancouver, there'd been Gore that had become Sikh as well. And actually, the reason is, when you get a diaspora growing, you need more clarity. Because otherwise things just go all over the place. And we do need also this common document, something like this, for interacting with the Western world. Like, for example, when we had the turban case now in Europe, in Belgium, we needed to have this to show that we need to keep our kish. If somebody goes to court now and they say, well, somebody cut my kid's hair, that's not right, we can use this to show, it says here that a Sikh should not cut the hair of his child. So that proves to us that it's important to keep the kish. Because a teacher might say, well, they can grow it when they're later on. Well, they don't have to keep it now, they can keep it when they're older. In school, they can have they can be money. That's not the way it works. Because it says here in our Rehat Maryada. So this interaction is important. And obviously, as we talked about, when new people come into Sikhi, they need some guidance as well. There's some misconceptions, I want to address them before I start talking about the Maryada. There's some misconceptions that people have. And the first misconception people have, this is the one that causes people to reject this, is they assume it's trying to replace their Maryada. What I mean by Maryada is, there are different people that have a different way of acting in our Panth. There's loads of people that had different views even when this was made. And this Maryada was agreed by all those people as well. And they didn't start changing what they were doing roughly. A lot of them kept their way of, so the Taksali Rehat, as you might call it, the way that they acted, that was around long time ago. The same with the Nihangs. The same with the, what you might call people that are of different parts within Sikhi. All those people took part in deciding this document. They didn't feel threatened by it because they were obviously given assurances. This is not trying to say that you stop doing what you're doing and do only this. This was a common basis for agreement. One of the things is, even at Harmandir Sahib, I'll give you an example. What's in this document isn't necessarily what happens at Harmandir Sahib. Because Harmandir Sahib is a bit unique. In one building, in one complex, you've got a Gurdwara and you've got another Gurdwara. And one Gurdwara is called Hari Mandir and the other one is called the Akaal Takth. One is more politically orientated and one is more spiritual orientated. Miri Piri. When you sit in Harmandir Sahib, you can't see Akaal Takht. It's made in such a way you can't look out the door and see Akaal Takht. It's just a little bit to the side. If you sit in Akaal Takht Sahib, you can see Harmandir Sahib. So the political leaders always need to have an eye on spirituality. When you're in Harmandir Sahib, you don't need to be thinking too much about the political side. Here, connect. When you go outside, fair enough, we go back to Miri Piri. So even in Harmandir Sahib, the things that happen are slightly different. They've got different things that are read out when Maharaj comes out. There's a different Maryada, if you might call it, there than there is in the Akaal Takht. So Akaal Takht and all the Takhts are trying to stick to this agreed Maryada. And other places might have different Maryadas. Doesn't mean it's replacing them. But when they agree upon a Panthic level, upon one document, this is the document that we refer to. As another story, for those people that really, obviously I personally have a lot of respect and adoration almost for Sant Jarnail Singh Pindrawale. It's a good story about him, and I will come to this later on. But one of the points in the Maryada is that when it comes to an argument over Ragmala, they say that Ragmala can be read, or in a Khand part, it can also be left out, depending upon the Maryada of the place, on the tradition of that place. Yeah? But in Akaal Takht, they don't read it. To make sure that it includes everybody, they don't read it. Now, at one point, obviously Taksal, Damdami Taksal, do really believe in the Ragmala. And you can see the debate online. I won't go into it. It's up to you. However, at one point, a nephew of Sant Jarnail Singh, because they were living in Akaal Takht at the time, came back. He'd been imprisoned, and he came back. And they decided to do an Akhand part, about this, the fact that they come out of jail. And in the Akhand part, at the end of it, they knew that Ragmala would not be read out. But they wanted it to be read out, you see. because they had the Rehat. That's how they used to do it. So they decided to use force. So they pulled out, they had a gun, and they stood there with the Granthi who was reading it, and they said, read it. Using a bit of force. So the guy read it out. Now Sant Jarnail Singh had always adhered to this. Because when they moved into Akaal Takth, they abided by the rules of Akaal Takht Sahib. They never tried to impose that this is the way to do it, like some people do longer era Sahib. They never imposed that on Akaal Takht. And this is what happened in the middle of when Sant Jarnail Singh found out about this. In the middle of the Sangat, they stood up their own nephew and slapped him. Yeah? That this is wrong. At a Panthic level, we all have to agree. We have to unite. And Sant Jarnail Singh was a uniting leader. And this document is important because if they respected it, every single Taksali should also respect it. If all the people that believe in him, they should also believe in this document because he respected this as well. Okay. Also, obviously, when we have disputes, we need document to agree upon. This is that document we can agree upon. In Panthic Morche, in a Gurmata, if there's a dispute in terms of guidance, we can again use this. So this is quite important to us as well. And what's really nice about this in this 32-page document, it's quite small, the entire Ardaas is in it as well. The Ardaas is included in this for a reason. You know, as a Panth, if we're approaching our Guru and doing Ardaas for something, if all the Sikhs around the whole world are doing Ardaas in this way, then we're all asking for the same thing. Yeah? Look at the power. Before, 1 million, 2 million, 22 million people asking for the same thing every day, right? That's going to keep us united, isn't it? As a Panth, it keeps us united. The Ardaas is quite important, and I'll come to that in a second. The history of this is important as well. So we understand when it happened, how it came about. Now, in 1913, as Gyaniji was talking about, there was a lot of problems in our Panth. After 1850, when Maharaja Ranjit Singh's Raj was out, since then, there was a lot of different things that came into our Panth. We know about that because there was a Gurdwara reform movement that came about to change that. In 1913, there was a big protest at Gurdwara Rakabganj Sahib in Delhi. There was a big protest there. And since then, basically, the Gurdwara reform movement started in earnest. They had these morchas all over the place. And in 1915, some drafts for this were put forward. They said, you know what, instead of just reforming stuff, we need to have some kind of document as well. And in 1915, the first draft was put forward. In 1920, the SGPC gets set up. And one of the first things the SGPC does is set up something called the Rohareet Committee. This committee is main reason is to decide what is the what is the way to live. Rohareet means how should we live, basically. So this committee was set up. We know about all the protests that happened afterwards, but just quickly, 1921, Saka Nankana Sahib happens. 1922, Harmandir Sahib, the keys for that are given over to SGPC. They weren't in the hands of SGPC before. The British government actually administered Harmandir Sahib. In 1922, the 22 also to 24, in those 2 years, we have Guru Ka Bagh Morcha, the Jetho Morcha, the Gurdwara Bhai Peru Singh Morcha. So all these things are happening at that time. There was a lot of revolution effectively in our Panth. We're getting back in control of our Gurdwara. You know, it's like quite exciting time. And then 1925, the Sikh Gurdwaras and Shrines Act is made. And then in 1925, basically, SGPC becomes in charge of all the Gurdwara in Punjab. Okay? And all the Mahants, etc. are now moved out. And then they started in earnest to work upon this. And basically, at that point, what we faced was an issue where even if we're going to set up our Gurdwara, it was still based upon the system of voting, unfortunately. Yeah? SGPC was like a committee and needed people to be members who can vote. The problem was there was no clear definition of what it took to be a Sikh. What was a Sikh? So there was a political need at that time to have this definition clear as well. Because the SGPC wanted to have a lot of members. The bigger they are, the more legitimacy they have within the British political system. Okay? So in 1931 and 32, a kind of draft was put forward of this. 4 years after that, in 1936, finally the draft is agreed. Not the final, just the draft is agreed. 4 years it took from then to agree the draft. And then in 1945, finally, you get the complete agreement over the Panth about this document. So can you imagine, from 32 when they started working, when they had a first working document, 4 years to get the final draft, then from there, another 9 years to actually just get this agreed. In total, we're talking from 31 to 45, 14 odd years debating about this 32-page document. Yeah? I mean, nowadays you'd think this, come on, speed up. Obviously, you have to take into account that in those days they didn't have email and kind of, Skype conferences. They had to write a letter, took a couple of months to get there, come back, all this kind of stuff. However, it still took a lot of work and a lot of people to make this. So, this is the same time, by the way, as the Second World War is going on, yeah? Right? The Sikhs are fighting away. The world is changing at this time. Independence happens in 47. In 45, we have this document ready for us to say who is a Sikh and who is not a Sikh, how should a Sikh behave. So who are the people that helped to make this happen now? Let's quickly go through this. Loads of people had a say in this, like I said earlier, but some eminent personalities like Bhai Veer Singh, if you can, go on YouTube, you can listen to their stories about Guru Nanak Dev Ji, about Guru Gobind Singh Ji, Guru Nanak Chamatkar, beautiful stories. Bhai Veer Singh, he helped to take part in this. We've seen that massive book, we call it the Khargosh at home, it's called the Mahan Kosh. Mahan Kosh, that document, that's written by Khan Singh Nabha. He was one of the main people in this as well. So very eminent people who knew a lot took part in this. Sant Teja Singh, he's written a great translation of Japji Sahib, by the way. He was part of this. Akali Kaur Singh, famous Nihang Singh. Sant Man Singh Nirmale. So Nirmale were involved as well. The Jathedar of Akaal Takth, obviously. Jathedar of Hazur Sahib, Keskar Sahib, Head Granthi of Haraminder Sahib. Also Pai Sahib Randir Singh had input into this as well from the AKJ. Okay. Jathedar of the Buddha Dal, Nihang Singha Chalda Wahir in Tobi Mandi in Lahore. Why I say Lahore is, at that time there was no independence, there was no Pakistan. Pakistan and India were one, so Lahore was still part of the Sikh, thinking. So this happened at that time. Now people think this thing didn't just come about, these important people that knew about this, they didn't just make this document up from thin air. Obviously it was based upon what they knew about Sikhi. So the practices in this document aren't something new. They're practices that had always been around. People had been living this way for a long time. They just encoded it. For example, the Bani of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, the Rehat Name, the Hukamname, Pai Chopa Singh, Pai Desa Singh, the letter of Guru Gobind Singh Ji to the Kabul Sangat, they all took part in forming this document. So you can see echoes of this in all the Rehat Name. Now what's inside this? I'm just going to go quickly through a bit of a description, sorry. It's not as exciting as Japji Sahib Katha, I have to say. But it's got to be done. Okay, the 32 pages, funny enough, of those 32 pages, the first 8 pages are just about who was involved in making this document. Trying to give it the, everybody was involved kind of thing, just to make sure it actually gets accepted by people. So actually, this document is only 24 pages long. That's it. Which is interesting because that's tiny. We could read this at any point. The document itself is divided into 6 sort of sections. Okay? 3 of the sections are really small. Of those chapters, there's 13 chapters. I like number 13, Sab Kuch Tera. Everything's 13, yeah? So there's only 13 chapters in 6 sections. 3 of those sections are 1 chapter long. Literally, they're like maybe 5 lines. So the bulk of this document is actually within chapters 2 to 4. The problem is, right, everybody focuses sometimes on the first couple. And they think, oh, this is just about science. It's basically listing stuff. The first ones are important, but what I found is that the Rehat Maryada, reading this document, I found it gets better the more you read of it. The more you read further down, the better it gets. Because actually sometimes, like you have like a speech, and before they start the speech, they start off saying, and I'd like to thank Flana Flana Banda and Flana Flana Banda, and I had to go through, you get all the sort of, what you might call the sort of social things out of the way, and then you actually get to the meat of what you want to say. The meat of this, if it was the wrong word, is actually in chapters 2 to 4. Okay? And the kind of preambles are the definitions of a Sikh that are given early on. Section 1, chapter 1, how it starts off. The smallest chapter of this whole book is tiny. Five, maybe 3 lines long is a whole section in our chapter. What it says is, what is a Sikh? Definition of a Sikh. Sikh hai ki. Okay? This is what it says. It's important for us to get this. Definition of a Sikh is someone who believes in one Akaal Purkh, the 10 Gurus, Guru Granth Sahib Ji, the Bani of all the 10 Gurus, okay, and believes in Khande Bate the Amrit. Doesn't mean that they've taken Khande Bate the Amrit, but they believe in the Khande Bate the Amrit, and then they have no other religion. Okay, they only believe I am a Sikh. They don't say I am a Hindu on Tuesdays, but a Sikh on all other days. Yeah, it's not like that. They are a Sikh, and that's what they are. Obviously, we understand one Akaal Purkh, but in that time, let's be clear, there were some people who didn't actually believe just in one Akaal Purkh. They followed quite a lot of other things. It doesn't mean that the Devi Devte do not exist. It just means that we don't worship them. Upashik of just the one. Yeah, Sahib Mera Eko hai Pai Eko hai. The 10 Gurus. This is important because at that time, some people had started believing in their own Gurus. Yeah, they were the people that were believing in the Bedi clan. There were other people that had set up their own. Namtari has become their own Guru. Even now, you see people setting up their own Guru orders. I saw a video of a guy yesterday from Canada who said that, oh, I'm a bit like Guru Nanak. And his main right-hand man, he said, oh, that's like Pai Lena. And I'm like Guru Nanak. No, we believe from Guru Nanak Dev Ji to Guru Gobind Singh Ji tak. At that point, no more human gurus. So somebody might be respected, but they're not called Satguru. They're not called Satguru for us. Satguru for us is only the 10 Gurus. And then the third part is Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Anybody who doesn't believe in Guru Granth Sahib Ji ceases to be a Sikh. One time, there was somebody who decided to take out all the Bani of the other Bhagats inside Guru Granth Sahib Ji. They created a Granth without the Banis of the Bhagats. That is not Guru Granth Sahib Ji, is it? Here you have Banis of 10 Gurus and you have Guru Granth Sahib Ji. The second you start creating your own Granth without the Bani of the Bhagats that are in Guru Granth Sahib Ji, he got ejected out of the Panth straight away. You're no longer a Sikh. So Guru Granth Sahib Ji is very important to us. No one can take that away from us. That's the one enduring gift of our Gurus, that even with whatever's happened, it unites us. The next thing is important. We talked about this a few times. The Bani of all the 10 Gurus. Now, why would it say Bani of all the 10 Gurus after it's just told you in Guru Granth Sahib Ji? Whose Bani is not in Guru Granth Sahib Ji after 10 Gurus? It's Dasam Pasha, Tan Guru Gobind Singh Ji. So their Bani is not in Guru Granth Sahib Ji. But if you're a Sikh and you don't believe in Bani Dasam Pasha, you're no longer a Sikh. That's it. Simples. A Sikh is somebody who believes in the Bani of all the 10 Gurus. So if you stand up tomorrow, like a guy in Canada did, and said that Jab Sahib is not Guru Gobind Singh Ji's Bani, and in here it says it is, you're no longer a Sikh. So we have to accept the Bani of all the 10 Gurus. Anybody who stands up and says Guru Gobind Singh Ji wrote nothing, right, then they basically treaded over this line. They need to just you need to backtrack and apologize. I didn't mean that. Otherwise, they're no longer a Sikh as per this. Then it says, the Khande Bate the Amrit. There's people at that time that were trying to give their own Amrit. There's people in our generation who've been doing this. They wash their feet. There was a guy, some guy with a pink chola. He started doing like milkshake, kind of pink milkshake Amrit. Yeah, you've seen pictures of him. So 7 Satare. These are the people that are trying to create their own Amrit. As a Sikh, we only believe in one Amrit. Obviously, there's a spiritual Amrit, but the main Amrit physical is Khande Bate the Amrit. If you don't believe in that, you say, well, there is no such power as Khande Bate the Amrit. If you say there's no such thing as the Khalsa, basically believing in Khande Bate the Amrit means believing in the Khalsa as the Guru's body. That's what it means, because the people that take that become the Guru's body. If you don't believe in it, you're not a Sikh. as per this document. Okay? Also, you have to profess no other religion. Even in time of Guru Arjan Dev Ji, there was a person who came to him and said, Maharaj, I want to be a Sikh. Let me take Charan Amrit. And Guru Sahib said, what are you? And he used to follow Sakhi Sarwar. At that time, there was another guy who was like a sant. And he's famous. At that time, he was quite big. Maharaj says, just pick one. You can't have two. Pick one. So that's how it works in this. If you're going to have a guru, you need to follow that guru. And at the beginning of this, because Gyaniji took so much time up, I didn't read this thing. But I want to read out something about Gunavanti. What is Gunavanti? The Guru Sahib gives us a Shabad in Gurbani, which talks about what we need to do. Maharaj says, Jo dise gur sikhda, tis niv niv lago pai jio, akhan birtha ji ki gur sajan dehe milaye jio. Let me meet my Guru. If I find somebody who's a Gur Sikh, I say, please take me to lead me to meet my Guru. Then Maharaj says, Soi das upadesada, mera man tan anat na kahu jai jio, eho man tai ku devasa, main marg deho bataye jio. Tell me the road to what we're talking about, the Maryada. Then this is important. Ho aya duro chal ke, main takki to sarnai jio, main asa rakhi chit mein, mere sabbo dukh gavaye jio. Then finally, et marg challe pairiye, gur kahe sokar kamai jio. In this road, to walk upon this road, we have to do what our Guru is telling us. A Sikh is a follower. We have to have one person who's going to be our teacher. The problem with this definition of a Sikh is that actually it doesn't talk about following. It's all about belief. And what I just said to you now, and what we've talked about throughout all the Katha so far, is a Sikh is somebody who walks this path and doesn't just say, I believe in it. So the problem with this is why I said this is kind of the preamble. Later on in this document, it goes in to say, what does a Sikh have to do? But at the beginning, it just gives you the kind of legal definition. This is for the voting rights that they required at that time. Who is a Sikh, who's not a Sikh? But we do need to have that clarity. So right at the beginning, it gives us a bit of clarity. So next part, section 2. So imagine this is it. That's section 1, chapter 1. Those 5 things, that's what a Sikh is. Next chapter, chapter 2, section 2, chapter 2 and 3, they're all about what do we have to do as a Sikh. Now here is important because even this clarifies some of the things that people argue about nowadays. Now I want to just go through it quickly. What the Khalsa Panth decided is this. Chapter 2 is literally just 2 lines again. What it says is, being a Sikh has 2 parts. This means that people say nowadays, Sikh, I think Sikhi is all internal. Right? This is what it says is, being a Sikh has 2 parts. Individual, okay, your personal jivan, and corporate, panthik. So if you're not living the panthik lifestyle of a Sikh, you're sort of not doing what it's telling you to do. A Sikh has to be both individual and think as a body. Why is it important to think as a body? Because if you want to do something in this world, one person can't do much, but 100, 1,000 people can. So we have a commitment to the panth, the Sikh body, what we call the Sikh panth. So you have a panthic duty. Doesn't mean you're Amritari. This is not the Khalsa panth we're talking about. We're talking about the Sikh panth. So we have a duty to the panth. That's important to us. And that later on in this document, right at the very end, it tells you what is your panthic duty. But first it tells you your individual and the Gurdwara Rehat. So that's just chapter 2 is purely just that. A Sikh has 2 things, individual and panthic. Chapter 3. It says, what should a Sikh's life should be about? Nowadays we will say, Sikhis naam japna, vand ke shakna, kirt kamani vand ke shakna, right? Well, it somehow says something similar to this, but it says something slightly different. What it says, a Sikh life consists of 3 things. Naam. Naam da abhyas. Do Naam. And later on it tells you Naam consists of Gurbani and of Waheguru Simran. I'll get to that in a second. It says you have to do Naam as first part. Secondly, you have to live your life according to the Rehat of Guru. It's no point getting up in the morning, doing an hour of Simran and going outside and lying, stealing, robbing the whole day. You have to live your life according to that Rehat as well. When we talked about Jat Pahara, Tirad Sunyar, what we said is, you can take that to mean you need to look at Guru's actions and your own actions, and look at Guru's writings and what you should do. Their actions. So we have to learn about our Gurus, which is why we started the Waheguru course. Just learn about our actions, how we should live. Then the third thing is, a Sikh's life must include is seva. We know that. Bani, Bana, and we say seva, Simran. Here is telling us Naam, Rani, and seva. Those three things are very important. If you're not doing seva, you're missing out on the tripod of Sikhi. If there's a tripod there, take away one leg, it falls over. That's the cool thing about a tripod. It's not like you have two options and the third one you can just ignore. No. We have to do seva, we have to do naam, and we have to live our life according to Gurmat. So the people that say, isn't it enough to be a good person? Yeah, if you want to be a good person, you've got one leg. If you do seva, that's two legs. But the tripod will still fall over. You need the third one, which is naam, Simran and Gurbani. Okay, then it talks about in chapter 3, it then goes on to talk about what is naam. Here's interesting. It says, a Sikh should wake up in Amritvela. And it even defines Amritvela, because sometimes people nowadays, they say, I believe in Rehat Maryada, I believe in this, then they start arguing with you, what is Amritvela? You say, why are you arguing with me about this? You said you believe in Rehat Maryada. It tells you on the second page, what is Amritvela? It says Amritvela is the last pair of the Raat. So you got day and night. Yeah? Day comes up, that's the day started. So last pair is the last 3 hours of the night, which is from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. And it says clearly that. So there's no argument about this. It says the Sikh should wake up in the Amritvela, do Ishnan, and then take bath, and then focusing upon one Akaal Purakh, should say Waheguru. Naam Simran Abhyas is what it's talking about this. Saying Waheguru. It says, repeat the name Waheguru. If somebody criticizes Simran now, and they say that I believe in the Sikh Rehat Maryada, then they're lying. You cannot believe in Rehat Maryada and say that waking up in the morning at Amritvela and saying Waheguru is false. It's very important. So look at it. It's given straight away. What's the biggest? Sarab roka okhad? No. Sere utke tells you. Ishnan karo, baitho, focus upon ik Akaal Purakh and say Waheguru, 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 Waheguru. Slow, fast, that's up to you. Yeah? But you got to say Waheguru. Then it says you got to do this Nitnem. It gives a Nitnem straight away. So there's no arguments about Nitnem. Now, before I start talking about Nitnem, because we're going to get to the end by I talk about this. Nitnem, there's Panj Baniya, that's the agreed Nitnem for the minimum Nitnem of the Panth. Then there's Panj Amrit Diya Baniya. So Nitnem di Panj Baniya and Amrit di Panj Baniya. Okay? The Amrit di Panj Baniya are the ones they used to make Khande Bate the Amrit. Then there's the Panj Baniya, the Panth agreed is the minimum Nitnem requirement. So this is talking about the Nitnem requirements. The Panj Baniya here talks about this. These are the things that we need to read. Japji Sahib and Jap. Jap Sahib by Guru Gobind Singh Ji. Guru Gobind Singh Ji wrote Jap Sahib. Guru Nanak Dev Ji wrote Japji Sahib. Now that's why we're going to go into Jap Sahib next, because obviously it's important. However, Guru Granth Sahib Ji starts with Japji Sahib, and Dasam Granth Sahib Ji starts off with Jap Sahib. Okay, right at the very beginning. Jap and Jap. There's loads of Rehatname that talk about this. Jap and Jap. And then it says you have to read the Das Swaye. Now it doesn't give here clearly, it doesn't say that Jap Sahib is written by Guru Gobind Singh Ji. It doesn't say Swaye written by Guru Gobind Singh Ji. But later on, it will tell you specifically that Benti Chopai is written by Guru Gobind Singh Ji. I'll come to that in a second. But it doesn't say here, because it's accepted. No one argued with that. Okay? You'd be a fool too, because you'd then go outside the Panth straight away. Okay? So the Swaye. Sravag Sud Samu. Those are the Swaye, because there's many Swayes that Guru Gobind Singh Ji wrote, and it starts off with Sravag Sud, it gives that specific one. Because there's Dinan Ki Swaye as well. So in the morning, those are the three very minimum. Now what it says here is that they should recite this at the minimum. Basically says that your Nitnem should include this. Now if you decide to do Japji Sahib, Job Sahib, Tawbah Sawiye, then Benti Chopi, Anand Sahib, then do Shabad Azare, then maybe do Sukni Sahib, then do Asadiwar, then do Slok Malanova, Jasri Kiwar. Good for you. Yeah? Good for you. It doesn't, this is not the limit. It's saying do it. Every morning in this Gurdwara, they do all Panjbani Amritvela every morning. Yeah? Good for you. The more part you do, the better for you. Don't think of this as like, oh, I've got to stop now because that's the rule. No. You got to do that. You got to keep on going. It's like minimum training to stay fit. Okay? But you can do more training and get even fitter. And that's good. And then it says, Rera Sahib. What's Rera Sahib to consist of? Shamil. The word comes up in the Punjabi one. Is in Rera Sahib. These are the Banis that are Shamil. Shamil means they're included. Okay? This is not limiting Rera Sahib. You got to remember, the people that agree to this used to read more Bani in the evening. They used to do Arti as well maybe in the evening. They used to do a lot more other parts. And they used to do longer Benti Chope and Chope Sahib. But they didn't disagree with this part. What it says. Okay. So the Reras includes this. The 9 hymns of the Guru Granth Sahib Ji occurring in Guru Granth Sahib Ji after Japji Sahib. So after Japji Sahib, it goes to Sodar. And from Sodar, it then goes into Asam Mahela Pehla, 2 Shabads. Then the 2 Shabads from Guru Ramdas Ji, one from Guru Ramdas Ji, one from Guru Arjan Dev Ji Pasha. And then it goes into Sopurak. After Sopurak, there's 1 Shabad by Guru Ramdas Ji, 1 more by Guru Nanak Dev Ji, and then finished off with another Shabad by Guru Arjan Dev Ji Pasha. So that's the bit that they're talking about, 9 Shabads. And then it says, you have to read the Benti Chope of the 10th Guru. It says it clearly there that Benti Chope Sahib is written by 10th Guru. However, it gives you from beginning, minimum, beginning to end. You have to read from here to there. That's what Gyaniji read out here. It says start from Hamri Karo Haat Te Racha and finish off with Pahen Gahe Jabate Tumre. Sorry, Dush Dog Te Leho Bachai. So basically the bit that comes after that is Kirpa Kari Ham Par Jagmata. So that bit, there was an argument about in the Panth. Theek hai na? So the people agreed that you can read from here to there and stop. Because actually Chope Sahib carries on after that as well. It goes on for a lot longer. So they agreed to stop it there before the ending of that part of Chope Sahib. But they said you have to include that it's written by Guru Gobind Singh Ji. It's not said earlier, but it says here specifically Chope Sahib by Guru Gobind Singh Ji. Because obviously if people are disagreeing about something, there's going to be a compromise, isn't there? Some people are saying, I don't want to have the whole of it. Some people are saying, I want at least up to here. They say, well, if you're going to say, stop here, make sure you write down, it is by Guru Gobind Singh Ji. So if you disagree with Chope Sahib by Guru Gobind Singh Ji, then you're disagreeing with what the Rehat Maryada is saying is Guru Gobind Singh Ji's Bani. Okay, then it says, obviously the Svaya, Pahenge He Jabate Tumre, then the Dohira, Sagal Dwar Ko Chhad Ke Geho Toharo Dwar. Now these Banis, the Svaya and the Dohira, they're not from Chope Sahib in the Chope Sahib of where Dasam Granth Sahib is written. You won't find them next to that. Yeah, they're from other parts. Like I think one is from Krishna Avatar and one is from Ram Avatar. So they're in other parts of Dasam Granth Sahib. But this was how the Singhs used to read it. So this was a tradition. So what I said at the beginning is that it just codified the tradition. It didn't create a new tradition, it just codified it. Okay? And then it says you have to read Mandavani and Slok Mahalla Panjwa. Now if after Slok Mahalla Panjwa you go on to read Paudi, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the minimum. But every place has to have this at the very minimum. So over here, in this Gurdwara, they read that at the very minimum. But when Gyaniji starts off at the beginning to do Rera Sahib, he starts from Har Jug Jug Pagatupaya. Yeah? When they do the Kirtan. So it's just in each area. There's no fixed rule. Some people, Nanaks are obviously read even longer than the Taksalis. So there's no fixed rule. This has to be included. The next bit I want to talk about is it says the Ardaas there, straight after. It says, what is the Ardaas? Now the Ardaas, it says specifically, has to start this way and has to finish this way. You can't change the Ardaas. The only bit you're allowed to change is that bit where you're allowed to do what you're asking for. Apart from that, the Ardaas has to stay the same. And right at the beginning, it will say, Ik Onkar Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. We know what that, and it says, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh, Sri Bhagoti Ji Sahai, Var Sri Bhagoti Ji Ki Pashahi Dasvi. That's written in here. What that is, Var Sri Bhagoti Ji Ki, a lot of people don't know, Var Sri Bhagoti Ji Ki refers to Chandi Diwar. So this first part, Pratham Bhagoti Simrike Gunanak Leityaye, up to Teg Bahadur Simriye Karnonid Avetai, that is the first body of Chandi Diwar. Okay, it starts off with that, and then you go into Tan Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj. That is not in Chandi Diwar. And it says that that Var Sri Bhagoti Ji Ki is written by Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj. It says Pashahi Dasmi. If you decide to say, well, oh no, I don't agree that Chandi Diwar was written by Guru Gobind Singh Ji, right, you're going against Rehat Maryada. You might agree to this document, but remember this is a compromise document. You can't just decide to say that you can interpret this the way that you want. It's saying specifically it's written by Guru Gobind Singh Ji. Okay? And in English it gives a translation of it as well. But in the Punjabi it will tell you Ardaas is just this, and it says Ik Onkar Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh Sri Bhagoti Ji Sahai Var Sri Bhagoti Ji Ki Pashahi Dasmi. Now it's interesting because up to Teg Bahadur Simriye Karnonid Avetai is the original body. After that, in Chandi Diwar, it doesn't say Tan Tan Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj. Because why would Guru Gobind Singh Ji put his own name in it? When you write a var praising the people before you, you don't decide to put your own name into it. You know? It's like Guru Gobind Singh doesn't want to say, he wants to say, I thank the people that came before me. If a Sikh had written it, he would have put in Guru Gobind Singh Ji's words, his name. But it says here that a Sikh didn't write it. Guru Gobind Singh Ji wrote it. If you read Ardaas and say, oh, I'm not going to say Pashahi Dasmi, you're breaking that Maryada, okay? Just so we know where that came from. Just like we know where Benti Chopi come from. People don't know sometimes where Benti Chopi Sahib comes from. It comes from the end of the Charitra Upakyan. You know the bit that's most contested in the Panth, Charitra Upakyan? It comes from that. Right at the very end of the whole of these 405 Charitra clevernesses, as they talk about them, at the end of that, Guru Gobind Singh Ji puts this Benti Chopi. And that Benti Chopi specifically finishes off, you know the bit where it says, Kirpa kari ham par jagmata granth kara puran subrata, kilbik sakal dek aur dustokan koche karta. At the end of that, it says, It Shri Charitra Upakyan, and it tells you what it is. This is a conversation between a mantri and a king. Bhoop and mantri Bhoop Sambade. There's a conversation between those two people. So those that don't know, you don't have to get into the argument about it. But specifically is telling you that there's 405 stories that have been written here. They are conversations between a king and his mantri. Okay, and it was written in this year at this place. And then we don't read that bit out, obviously, but it's there. It's not saying that the rest of it is not written by Guru Gobind Singh Ji. It's just saying that you don't have to read all of it. You can stop there. Okay. After the Ardaas, so what it says is, these are the Banis that we have to read every day, at the very minimum. This is how the Ardaas has to be done. And in the morning and the evening, we should do Ardaas in this way, as a Sangat, right? And then finish off by obviously doing the Jakara and those things. And it says, when we are doing Ardaas, everybody must stand up and have their hands folded. And now we look at everybody sitting here in this Sangat right now. Everybody's got their own tongue of sitting. Everybody's got a different way of sitting, crossing their legs, holding their hands. Some people got legs to one side, some people got hands. Everybody's got one way of sitting. But when we do Ardaas, we stand up, okay, and we have our hands folded like this together. That's what it says. That's how Ardaas should be done. Okay? Should stand with the hands folded. We can't just stand there like this or with our hands like that. It's supposed to be like this. Hat jod ke. Okay? And the person who's doing the Chor Sahib should carry on doing Chor Sahib. And then it says that if you haven't got Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj there, then you can face in any direction. Obviously try to face one direction or towards each other. Okay? And then it says that if in the Sangat, like for example in Anand Karaj, some people are doing Ardaas, like for example, if the Ardaas is for Singh Sahib who's standing up here, then not all of us have to stand up. Just he stands up and does the Ardaas, and then the Hukamnama is read out and he listens to it. So we can do the wedding thing, is giving the explanation. In the last couple of minutes, I'll just go through how the rest of the Maryada is actually set up, and we'll talk about next week some of the other parts of it. Okay? What it says is, so check section 2 is just what we just talked about now. So we covered section 1, section 2 out of the 6. And then section 3 is all about the Gurdwara. How is a Gurdwara to be organized? So it talks about importance of Sangat, what is Kirtan, how is Kirtan to be done, Hukamnama, how is that to be taken, talks about how should we read Akhand Path Sahib, Sahaj Path Sahib, how should we do Aramb, how should we do Pog, start and end. It talks about how should we even make Kada Prasad, and talks about what is Katha, how is Katha to be done in a Gurdwara, what's the point of Katha, how should we do it. Then section 4 is all the important stuff that we're going to talk about a lot more next week, which is about the different ceremonies in Sikhi. And it talks about how we need to get rid of all the rituals in our life and stick to one Waheguru, the naming ceremony, not the birthing ceremony, but the naming ceremony of a baby, marriage ceremony, and the funeral ceremony. Now those are 3 ceremonies, okay? There's a 4th one, and that's talked about at the very end. Section 5 is all about Seva. It's a very small section. It tells you why Seva is so important and what is Seva. Just to kind of talk about that, it specifically says Seva is not just serving the Sangat. Seva is helping anybody, any poor person, that's Seva. Because sometimes people will say, my Seva is Seva. Helping us is Seva. It's not. Seva is helping any human being. Okay, that's what it says very clearly what Seva is. So it's got some very nice principles in here written down as well and codified. And then it finishes off with section 6, which is all about the Panth. What we talked about at the beginning, you got your individual life and the Panthic life. It's all about the Panthic life. What is Amrit? How is Amrit prepared? Okay, what is the responsibility of an Amritari person? Important point, isn't it? Sometimes we think, oh, Amrit Shakita, go back home, carry on as normal, yeah? No, it gives some definition of what you have to do as Amritari as well. One of them is to remain Tyar bar Tyar. Yeah? Not tomorrow I'll be ready. Tyar bar Tyar means ready upon ready. Ready upon a moment's notice to deliver what you should be doing as a Sikh, as a Khalsa. And talks about why is the Guru Khalsa Panth so important to us. So those are the kind of 6 sections of the Rehat Maryada. There are, just to give a kind of a heads up for next week, this Rehat Maryada, yeah, as a rule, it's a good document to agree upon, but there's no one organization in our Panth right now which loves this document. Yeah? Because you can take some of the rules like I just talked about now, about some of the parts, and every single person will have something that jibs them from this document. Yeah? It doesn't suit any one person, but as a whole, it can suit all of us. Okay? So it's meant to be a base of agreement and not necessarily your perfect document. Even like if you look at the missionaries nowadays, even some of the things I talked about today, they wouldn't agree with. The people that were Taksali or AKJ or other parts of, they're not all going to agree with this document 100%, but it's a good basis for agreement. So think of it in that way. And obviously even the Gurdwara nowadays could learn a lot from this, because it talks about the rituals. And I'll talk about this next week, what it says about Akhand Path. Nowadays we all do Akhand Path Sahibs, but what is an Akhand Path supposed to be? Because I want to give you a little heads up. It says specifically that no Akhand Path should ever be read when no one is listening. Ajkal, behind Harmandir Sahib, there's a big building, behind Akaal Takth Sahib. There's a big building, loads of rooms, about 3-4 stories. Every single room has an Akhand Path going on. And people like us here go online, SCPC website, donate the money for a Akhand Path, and it just happens there in a room. And they email you back the Hukamnama. I talked about this before. This is against the Rehat Maryada. Okay, we can cuss them. What do we do here? We do the same thing. Next to us and over here, there's rooms, 4 Guru Granth Sahib Swarups, 4 Akhand Paths happening. Sometimes there's 9 Akhand Paths happening at the same time. Maybe only one is being listened to. Then they stop listening to it and put on Rara Sahib. No Akhand Path should ever happen without somebody listening to it, from the family or from the Sangat. And a good example of that If you look at Bhai Sahib Ranveer Singh's book, when he talks about when he listened to the entire Akhand Path, he just walked into Gurdwara and they started doing the Akhand Path. And he listened to the whole thing. Shuru, 48 hours they sat down and they were in Samadhi for that long, whole Akhand Path. They didn't stop the Akhand Path halfway through to put on something else. It says in here, only one thing should happen at any one time. Either Kirtan or Katha or Path. Yeah? Nowadays, we've got this smorgasbord, things going on at the same time, trying to do like computers nowadays, multitasking or something. You got Akhand Path going on, same time let's do a Kirtan Darbar, at the same time let's do something else, let us pause it for Rada Sahib. That's not how it works. So there's many teachings in this which are very important, but as a rule, not one organization, very few organizations can stand up and say, oh, I follow this 100%. And there's no need to as well. This is the rules and the minimum part is different. The rules in this are important. We need to follow those rules. But the minimum part, the agreed upon rehat, you can do more if you want. There's no need to argue about this. This is one of the misconceptions. So next week, we're going to go through the ceremonies, okay, because people ask, what should I do when my baby's born? What should I do when I get married? What's the rules? So we talk about that. And then we talk about how is Amrit made, the importance of Amrit, and about, obviously, what should happen in a Gurdwara. And we can actually ask our Gurdwara, are you living up to this document that you all talk about? Because a lot of them aren't. They think they are, but they haven't read it properly. They just pick and choose the bits that they like. But they have to understand the whole thing. So I'm sure I've made loads of mistakes in that. And you can get this from Sikh Missionary Society. The Punjabi version is available here. So Pulla Chokani Khema Bakshni ji, Fateh Jawab, Fateh Vijana ji, Waheguru ji ka Khalsa, Waheguru ji ki Fateh.
Vaheguru, 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 Vaheguru.